I come from a very, very strong background of, heavy belief in the Greek Orthodox religion. And, the Orthodox are very practicing. There's different types of Christians, as I'm sure, you've experienced and you've come across throughout your life. And there's varying degrees of them practicing. And in the Greek Orthodox religion, my family specifically was, very practicing, especially, I had some aunts that would always push us. So I grew up every single Sunday going to church, right? It was just a normal part of our life. And on top of that, especially when I was a lot younger, my aunt made us go to the church during the weekday a couple times a week to learn about the religion, which hindsight I actually really respect, her practicing and focusing on it. So long story short, I was always that kid, at the church, in the school kind of setting in the church, asking a million questions. I don't know if you could relate to that, but I was always just, that extremely curious, and I wanted to know why. And I remember one time specifically, my aunt, my mom and I and my sister, we were driving home from church, and I was pestering my aunt so much with so many questions. She actually got frustrated because I kept, especially as a kid, kept asking why. I was like, hey, there's Adam and Eve, and they have a kid, and then what? And then from there, how does the earth continue to populate? And, she struggled answering these questions. And I remember one of the biggest questions that I had at a young age that honestly deterred me from following the religion was the whole concept of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And, as a fellow Muslim, I know, this is one of the biggest, debate points that we always get into. So, because in Greek Orthodox, they actually do like the way that they pray. So the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, they put their fingers like that, like three, and that's how they do the cross. Right. So, yeah, it's a little bit potentially unique as compared to some other sects of Christianity. So I remember asking, my aunt, and I remember asking some of the different pastors on how can three be one? And the crazy thing is, this is from a very young age. SubhanAllah, I can't even write this looking back at it. And from a young age, always curious, asking all these questions. And unfortunately, nobody could give me clear answers. So that set me on a very, weird path in my life, in all honesty, where at a young age, I got into a lot of trouble. Hanging out with the wrong crowd, doing the wrong things, completely lost sense of religion. But at that time in my life, I'm talking my early teens, 14, 15, I believed in the concept of God, but I didn't follow a particular religion, right? So I believed in, hey, there is a God, but I don't know who's right, but there has to be a God. And I was doing a lot of bad things, transparently speaking, at that young age. I unfortunately got into to even selling drugs. Like I was really with the wrong crowd, doing the wrong things, drinking every weekend, just participating in a lot of, very, very bad things that were not good for me, not good for those around me. And I had a moment when I just turned 16. I was living with my father in Scarborough, and just a little suburb outside of Toronto. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'm really in a dark place right now. I think all these things are getting to me. My mom came over. We had a very deep conversation. And this was the first time my mom, which by the way, just sidebar, my mom's an absolute angel, like one of the most supportive, women. So essentially, she came all the way to Scarborough. We had a really deep heart to heart. And this was a moment that she actually opened up to me about how she also aligns with the fact that there's one God, but she didn't know what religion to follow. And this is where it was crazy, because for the longest time in my life, I had assumed that my mother was just hardcore Greek Orthodox, but it was actually just her sister's influence on her that had her practicing that religion. So my mom was fairly monotheistic, as you would say. She believed in one God, and her and I just really connected, which was a very, very beautiful moment. I'm about 16 at that time. Fast forward a few years, I was on a good track until, again, started hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I really had lost sense of God, and I got more into I'm sure you've probably related to it, I got into more of the spirituality, like, the universe